Page 60, Section 2. As I have just said, you have finished Part 1 and continue reviewing Part 1. Everything that you're playing is in open position. Page 60 is the page that we start position playing. As we played movable chord forms in Section 1, like F major or F minor and G major to G minor, we're going to be playing movable scales throughout this whole section. We're going to be playing scales that have no open strings. Instead of playing a C scale like this, in order to make it movable, we have to play it so that it has no open strings. We're going to move what we have been playing in first position to second position. Remember, position is determined where your first finger plays. A position is 4 frets. Yes, we will stretch to 1 fret before it and 1 fret after it when needed. But if we're in a position, it is 4 frets, and it is called by the fret that your first finger normally lies in. The positions, just like the chord forms, are represented by Roman numerals. If we look at page 60, this is major scales. C major, fingering type 1, second position. Fingering type 1, remember, we're going to number our fingerings so that we can categorize them. Here's something that is important to read. Strictly speaking, a position on the fingerboard occupies 4 adjacent frets. Some scales have 1 or more notes that fall outside this 4 fret area, and these notes are to be played by reaching out with the first or fourth finger without shifting the entire hand. Example, finger stretch, or FS. When the out of position note is a scale tone, the finger stretch is determined by the fingering type. Fingering type 1, which is what we're going to play for C major in second position, equals first finger stretch. Fingering type 4, which we will cover later, covers and uses a fourth finger stretch. That's for scale tones. There are differences between scale tones and non-scale tones. We are always going to play the same finger out of position for a scale tone. This F in the key of C will always be played with the first finger. The next important sentence. When the out of position note is not a scale tone, moving upward we use a first finger stretch. And moving downward we use a fourth finger stretch, regardless of the fingering type. Like this. If we're playing a C scale and we have to play G, G sharp A. There's our regular scale. Going up the scale, G sharp, we play with our first finger going into A. Coming down, that G sharp or A flat, since it's coming down the scale, we're going into that next note. Fourth finger stretch. See that? That's an explanation that I will be repeating. If you don't understand it completely right now, the main thing is that we're going to learn fingering type 1 today. Fingering type 1 is C scale in second position. Let's look at the first line of the C major scale. Position 2, Roman numeral. Circle around the number means the string. The number on top of the note is the finger. So C is second finger, fifth string. We're automatically in second position. D, we used to play open, now is fourth finger on the fifth string. Fourth string, E, F, G. Third string, A, B, C. Second string, second, four. Then we have the note F on the first string. Will always be a first finger stretch. Remember, fingering type 1, first finger stretch. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. C, B, A, G. Stretch for the F. This is not what you want to do. You see that? You don't want to move your hand. You want to stretch. And if I can do it, I have very small hands, you definitely can do it. Okay, so now we're going to play the C major scale exercise on page 60 to page 61 with repeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a lot to that exercise. In order to play this well, you should take it in bits and pieces. The first two lines, which are repeated, is the statement of the scale in second position. All the way from C to A, down to C, down to low F, back to C. That repeats. Then there is the statement of the scale with a passing tone from G to G sharp to A, and coming back down, A to A flat, which is G sharp, back to G. So you should practice that on its own. Then you would be adding the exercise, which starts on 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth line, where we, this a little melodic. And so forth. In the second page of it, page 61, the next to the last measure, we have this A. You might say, well, you said that you had to play F always with your first finger in the first fret and not in the 6th fret with your 4th finger on the 2nd string. If you read the bottom blurb, it says, when an out-of-position note is immediately preceded or followed by a note played with the same finger that would normally make the stretch reverse the usual finger stretch. In other words, instead of A, that's very, very, instead of, so instead of moving or like that, just stretch for the F. Now here's the 8th note study on the middle of page 61. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's another exercises that use some chromatic notes. There is a scale in jazz that is called the bebop scale, and that is an 8-note scale as opposed to our major scale that consists of 7 notes. When you add an extra chromatic to the major scale, what it does is that it puts all strong notes on the beat instead of that outline the chord. In other words, in a C major triad, here's your C major triad. If we're doing just 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Notice we're ending on the C on the and the 4. When we add the G sharp, a chromatic, we're coming back to the C right on the beat 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Notice on the downbeat we end on 1. And that actually puts all our chord tones right in the right position if we're playing a scale against the C major chord. In the 8th note study that we just played, we're taking C, and then we're taking the note B, and we're adding a chromatic there. A, G, G again, F, E, D. So that's a good exercise to work on. The next study we have is an arpeggio study, broken chords. An arpeggio, when you play an arpeggio, you're playing the notes in a chord in the order that comes next. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. We're not playing just chord tones. To me, just chord tones are 1, 5, 3, 5, 1, 3. Those are chord tones. Arpeggios are chord tones in a row. These arpeggio studies that we're going to have in each key that we study, we're going to play them two different ways. The first way we're going to play it is that new way that we played on page 59, where every new string, especially going up the chord, we're going to have a downstroke. Then the second time we play it, I'm going to play it with all alternate picking. When you practice this, you should do one or the other and practice it for a while, then switch and do the other one. Let's say you start with alternate, practice that a while, then play it with that new picking that we call. Let's call it the rest stroke picking. So, but when I'm demonstrating it now, I'm first going to do it with all the rest strokes, and then the second time through, I'm going to do it with all alternate picking. 1, 2, 3. Notice when you're going C, E, G, that's with that picking. When you're coming back down the arpeggio, usually I do alternate, and as it has. So, alternate. Down, 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 up, and so forth. And the second time through, I used all alternate picking. In the first measure, we have C, E, then we have G, C, E. They're all in the same fret. What I don't do is lift up our finger. What we do is roll our fourth finger. See? Even coming back down. So the first time, the first measure we're going, the fourth measure we're going. That's a hard maneuver, but just do it slowly. We're going to come up to it now. Notice I just don't go to the E with I make sure. Here's a good exercise to get that going. Just take the first two strings and start playing. Then the next two strings. Next two. Then try three. I'm not even thinking notes. I'm just trying to get my finger to get strong enough to roll. The way I would practice this first is to make it all quarter notes again. And not even worry about the picking. Get your right hand just comfortable and get your left hand just going for the notes. And then you can pick up speed. Hold the C, and then we play the E and the C together. In addition to playing these arpeggios, we should basically know what chord we're playing, because they are arpeggios of chords. So I will tell you what chord the first measure is a C major. The second one is D minor. The next one is a G7. Back to 1 or C. To F. To C. G7. So we're hearing C, D minor, G7, C, F, C, G, C, C, D minor, G7, C, F, C, G7, C. Page 62 is the first chord etude that we have in the second section. These chord etudes really are beautiful, and not only are they melodic, they're very, very strong harmonically, and they really give you a workout for both your right and left hands. I am not going to play this with a metronome because we have an accelerando, meaning to get faster. The first part is done slowly and freely, and we have a retard, and we go back and forth between different tempos. So you can interpret it the way you would like to. I'm going to interpret mine. You can listen to it. The main thing I want you to know is that I am interpreting it to how I think it should sound, not because a fingering is hard or not. So get it so that you can play it somewhat in tempo so you can make decisions musically and not just physically. Chord Etude 1. you have to work on this so that you can get the movement from one chord to another as smooth as possible so they flow into each other. So when I'm playing this little C chord, I'm not thinking C anymore. I'm thinking of the next chord, which is part of an E7. So I'm going, oh yeah, now I'm getting ready for this A minor chord, another A minor chord, D minor, F minor, G7, E7, A minor. You don't have to name the chords. I know these chords because I've studied the harmony on this chord etude, and I know what to hear and I'm expecting it. But even if you just thinking of fingerings or notes, always plan on where you're going to. And remember, the fingering, whether it is written or not, should be decided by what you're coming from and what you're going to, not just by the one way you know how to play that chord. So have some fun with that chord etude. It'll get to be fun. It'll be hard work at first, but it'll be worth it. Etude number 5 on page 63. It's a duet, key of C. This is the first duet that we're playing in second position. Part 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rhythm in this is pretty straight ahead, mostly quarter notes and eighth notes. The hardest thing here are some of the chromatic lines. In the last measure of the first line, D, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B. D, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B. And that's right, we're going to play G sharp with that first finger. Same thing in the third measure of the second line. F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. We have the B and the F together. 3 and 2, 4 and 1. The main thing with this is to keep tempo and start trying to play everything even more legato than you have been playing before. You were playing legato with open strings before. Now you're pressing down on every single note. So it's going to take some more effort and some more strength and muscle building for you to do this. Don't practice 4 hours at one time to try and do this. You're going to hurt your hand. If you're having some problems with strength, practice at different times during the day. Let's say you practice a half hour in the morning, a half hour in the afternoon, and a half hour at night. Have some time that you have rest in between. You can maybe make it a half hour to 45 minutes in the morning, and then maybe half hour, 45 minutes. Start building up time. So now it's your turn to play this part. Here's part 2 of Etude number 5, the duet. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, we start out with all 4 measures rest, and I did count 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. It's harder to say it than think it. But as I'm doing that, I'm ready with my first note on that second line, E. My hand is ready to play. Let's look at that rhythm. Again, if we split it in half, that measure, it's 1 and 2 and then the rest of the measures 3, 4 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1. The third measure of that line, we also have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So the syncopation of entering on the end of 1 with a quarter note followed by an eighth note happens a number of times here. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. The third line, don't forget the F sharp, the B flat in that first measure, and then you have a natural sign in your second measure of that line in parentheses reminding you that yes, we are in the key of C, and we're going to play a B natural. We play the F sharp in the third measure with that rhythm. Stretch for the A flat because it's coming down to the G. Stretch with your fourth fingers. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 to 4. Then we go F sharp with our third finger. Then hold the F while we play the B. So those two measures are 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Next measure is a little different of a rhythm that we had in those other measures. Again, we have that 1 and 2 and. But the next half of the measure is 3 and 4 and. 3 and 4 and 1. So 2 measures of the fourth line. The first two, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. And the only other part there that is a little difficult out of the norm is the last measure. On that line, we're playing the F sharp C, hold the F sharp to the C, then we play, hold, and then play the C again, but we move down to the F. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So now it's your turn to play this part. 1, 2, 3, 4. Page 64 starts our first time that we're doing reading studies. The first words that you see on this page are questionable to everyone. They say, do not practice these pages, just read them, but not more than twice through any single practice session. These 2 pages are to be read and try to read it straight through, keeping tempo, not losing any time, not slowing down, just looking at the music and reading. Page 60, 61, 62, 63, you practice that so that you know what's coming next. You almost have it memorized. You know exactly where to go. You get your hands in the right position. You're analyzing it. In arpeggios you're looking at, you're calling it a C triad. Here, I just want you to read through it. If you keep a steady tempo, what happens is that your head just keeps moving through the measures. Whether you miss a note or not, you just keep going. It's very important to keep the tempo, because when you're reading with other people, the main thing is that you're in the right place at the right time. You can be at the right place at the wrong time, and that's the wrong place. Those are wrong notes. So what I'm going to do, the way we're going to do it, is that I'm going to put the metronome at a very slow tempo. Now we'll do it even slower. Play it with me. If you make a mistake, catch up to me. If you finish before me, you don't win the race. Play it with me. See if you can keep up with me. If you can't, put the metronome at even a slower tempo and just keep going. The one mistake that students make a lot with this is that they play a wrong note and then they correct it. As soon as you play that wrong note, it's history. The most important note that you're going to play is the next note that's in tempo, or the next note that's one of the next measure. You just keep it going. Page 64. 1, 2, 3, 4. After a while, you start to recognize that when you have a run of notes that are in scale-wise, stepwise motion, so that you're reading the whole phrase. When I look at the first measure, I see that I have notes from C to G, and it's in a row C, D, E, F, G. I'm not reading C, D, E, F, G. I'm reading from C to G. I know that I just go up the scale, and I wind up on G and come back down to C, B, C, D. Then I go from E to B, E, F, G, A, and back down. So you start recognizing phrases after a while, and that will help you learn to sight read. Well, let's not even talk about sight reading. Let's say that will help you to learn to read better, which will in fact help you to start sight reading better. Here's page 65, the second reading study. Keep up with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. As it says at the bottom of the page, if you have a lot of problems trying to keep up, go back to page 60 and keep practicing that scale and those exercises. Page 66. We have a ballad, slowly, that we play this ballad, and it's a duet. Ballad, part 1. 1, 2, 3. You thought since you were in part 2 or section 2 of the book that you were never going to play in first position. Well, you're wrong. We're coming back to first position a number of times in this section. We're using open strings, we're using chords that we have already played before, plus chords that we have not played before. At the beginning of part 1, we're playing the C chord and then keeping it down, and then sliding our first finger up to C sharp and G, and then holding A. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, open E. That's right. And then 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Slide up. A with your fourth finger. Then C6-9, you will learn this in a little while. I'll label it. This is a diminished chord. Now at the beginning of this piece, we start on the 4th beat. We have a pickup. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Watch out for holding the notes all the way through. They should be held. The way to practice this is to make sure that you know the chord that's coming up. So if this is the first time I saw this piece, I would say, okay, that first measure and that second measure, how do I do that? And then there's a chord in the 3rd measure. On the 4th chord, it's like an F minor. Oh, and then in the first ending, I have this, I have to hold that. And then C. Let's see, how do I play that chord in the 2nd measure of the first ending? Oh yeah, 3, 3, 1, 1. That's how I would play it. 2nd measure of the first ending. Then it's a diminished chord. Keep your 4th finger on G, right? Okay, so it's... In the 2nd ending, figure out these chords. 4th finger on the B, so you can go. Now this chord. See, this is the hardest part. Playing this chord, it's really an A9 chord. Playing the D, and then the D sharp. See how I'm flattening my finger? That one hurts. And then we repeat the theme again in our last 2 lines, the last line on page 66 and the line on page 67. And we come across chords we've already played, except the next to the last measure, we're playing the E, and then we're playing, right? And then we're moving those fingers down and adding our 4th finger on D. So it's, this will take a little while to get together, so work at it and start practicing it. Here's the second part. 1, 2, 3, 4. At the bottom of the page it says, a position mark in parentheses represents placement of second finger as first finger is not used. In other words, at the next to the last measure, we have in the bottom part, we have G, and then we have this chord. Notice the 3 is in parentheses. This means that the first finger is not in the third position because it's not being used. So the second finger, which is the lowest finger, and that's in the third position. So that's third position in parentheses. Third position without parentheses would be this. Third position with parentheses would be this. The second part really is the one that holds the tempo together and gives you the sound of the chords. They're almost arpeggiations. 1. So I would practice, if I had problems with that, I'd first say, okay, those are all the notes in the first measure together. Here are the notes in the second measure together. Third measure. So then we have. And then we have a chord, C chord together. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and starting in the second ending, watch out for holding the C in the second measure, C, and then keep that down. And that's played twice. There's a repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then no note on the first beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice when I play the third measure in the fourth line, where it goes A, D, G, I don't move my hand away. I don't go, then. I keep my hand in position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So now it's time for you to play this. 1, 2, 3. Page 67. This is a very important page, both this and page 68, for movable chord forms, part 2. We had movable chord forms, I think it was page 58 in the first section. Movable chord forms really are the basis at organizing your chord sounds and your any type of chords you're going to play after. You many times related to your first movable chord forms. There are 3 basic forms that you can get many chords from. The first one is your major chord, F major. Root is 6th string. So if this is F major, this is F sharp major, this is G, G sharp A, C, D, F. If you can't get all the notes ringing, at least get the lower notes ringing, because that's how I strum. The next chord form is your dominant 7th chord. You've already played this somewhat. This is a C7. Basic chord form, basic form 2, dominant 7. 1, 4, 2, and we'll put the 3rd finger on the 6th string. This is a C7. Root, 2nd string. Or if you want to not play the 6th string and play the 3rd fret of the 5th string, that's the root 2, 5th string. C7, D7, E7, F7, or we can play it with the lowest note, root on the 5th string, C7, D7, E7, F7. And the next basic form is your major chord, B flat chord. Root 5, B flat, C, E flat, D, D flat, C, B, B flat. You can play the 5th in the bass too, but the root is the 5th string. I would play the 5th string right now, so you always say that's the root. From these forms, you can get other chords. Let's look at page 68. From your basic chord, form 1. Look at that one, that's basic, that's from the number 1 on page 67, F. If you lift up your 2nd finger, F minor. All right, if you go back to F again, and you lift up your 4th finger, you get F7. There is a note in parentheses here. You can play it like this. But this is basically what I want you to do right now. F7, F, F minor, F, F7. Then if we go back to our F minor chord, and we lift up our 4th finger, we get F minor 7. So we have F, F minor, F7, F minor 7. Now, if we look at the next slide, we have a minor chord, root 5. Actually, this is built from basic form 3, F, B flat major, B flat minor, B flat major, B flat minor, B flat major, B flat minor. Now let's go back to B flat major again. And now instead of, back to the minor 7, you do also have this 4th finger here on your diagram. Right now, again, let's not do that form, just do the B flat minor 7. If we go back to B flat major and then we do, see how we're doing this? 4th finger goes to the 3rd string, 3rd fret. That's B flat 7. 5th string root still. And now we have, if we do the last form, major 7. The chord that makes you think the sun comes out, major 7. So, look, in this one page, we have root on the 6th string and the 5th string. The 6th string is F, F minor, F7, F minor 7. From this form, the second line we have B flat minor. Lift up your 4th finger, B flat minor 7. Put down your 4th finger, you got B flat 7. Put your 2nd finger down, you got B flat major 7. The exercise we have on this page tells us what frets to play these chords on. You're going to see that we're going to play both B flat in the 6th fret, using this form, root 6, and we're also going to play B flat in your 1st fret. We're going to play B flat minor 6th fret. We're going to play B flat minor 1st fret. So go by the position markings. They'll make you play all the chords that you should be working on. About notation, this is very good information. A chord that is indicated just by the letter is a major. If it's just followed by a 7, it's a dominant 7 chord. It doesn't have to say G dominant 7, it just says G7, that's G dominant 7. Many times minor is a minus sign. B flat minor would be B flat with a minus after. Major 7 can be indicated a number of ways. You have MAJ7, MA7, capital M7. The most of the time I see MA7. Here is the exercise at the bottom of page 68. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure that you have the release on the 2nd and 4th beat. So it's 1, 2. So that's long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short. B flat minor. Then we're going down to the 5th position, A minor 7. Lift up that 4th finger, that's it. G minor. 4th finger up, C7 right there. Then F. We're going to keep F7. B flat major 7 is just going to be in that 1st position. B flat minor, lift up your 4th finger, B flat minor 7, F. G minor 7, C7, F. B flat minor, F. You don't have to play all the strings. It's, as it says in the book, it's like you're flicking something off your wrist. Look at my right hand. There, that's how you do it. It doesn't have to be with any motion with the shoulders, just the wrist. A snap. You might have to rest after that chord exercise because that's a lot of notes that you're holding down, especially when you go into the F7. Page 69, the picking etude number 4. To prepare for this etude, put your third finger on D and just keep it there. You don't even have to play it. I just want you to play the G scale using open strings and actually odd fingers to play this. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. See? And that's how you'll navigate playing all those notes with your third finger down throughout the whole piece. Picking etude number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. At the end, we have, at the asterisk, we have something that's called a grace note. The last beat of the last measure, we have a B and G played together, but we have a little note before it with a slash. That's a grace note, and it should go. It means that that B is played slightly before the G. So it goes. Now look at the form of this. It's a long piece. We go all the way down to the next to the last line. We have DS al coda. That means that we go to the sign, which is the beginning of the third line. We play all the way till we have this coda sign, says to coda, and we drop to the last line on the page. So it's really a long piece. It really builds up your strength with your right hand and your left hand holding that G down. The second section of this book is divided into 10-page sections. We have just finished the first 10 pages of this second section. This includes the C major scale, your beautiful chord etude, a semi-beautiful etude number 5 duet, going into this new thing called reading studies, where you quote-unquote don't practice these pages, you play through them. Into another ballad, duet, and definitely our new chord forms with roots on the 5th and 6th string, and the good old dreaded picking etude number 4.